We'll do a review of the Sichas in Chelek Chof, volume 20. This is the first Sicha for the Parshas Chayay Sara. It's a Rashi Sicha. The Rebbe asks a simple question that the same wording similarly are repeated 3 times in the Parsha. The Parsha talks about the summation of the years of Sara right in the beginning of the Parsha. And over there it says each time Shona and Rashi makes 2 drushes for each time saying Shana. Then later on the Parsha, towards the end, we have again the years of Abraham. Over there it also says the same as here. But over there Rashi only says 1 drusha on Shana. And towards the Mamish at the end of the Parsha, we talk about Yishmael. And over there, again, it says the 3 Shanas, and over there Rashi doesn't comment at all. So what's going on? The Rebbe brings down, and the Rebbe explains all this very interestingly, that the actual Rashi when the pasuk gives the summation of Avraham, even though it seems in Chachil and Rashi that there's only one thing there, but over there too is really 2 things. Just like by the beginning by Sara, and by Yishmael, Rashi doesn't comment because the same 2 things that are by Yitzchak are by Yishmael, as the Rebbe will explain all this. But let's go step by step. Chayay Sara Aleph. In Heitiker Sedre lost wissen die Teure dem Sachakel von the Yoren von Sara. The Teure tells us the total, the years of Sara, Avraham and Yishmael, and about Yishmael. In Ascholos HaSedre, the beginning of this Sedre, the Torah talks about Sara. It says, "Vayu Chayay Sara." Sarah's life war Meya Shana, ve'esrim Shana, ve'sheva Shana. It could have stated 127 years. Meya ve'esrim ve'sheva Shana. No, but it says Shana each time. Meya Shana, then it says esrim Shana, ve'sheva Shana. Same lashon is also by Msim Asedra towards the end of the Parsha. It says, these are the days of Avram's life. It says again, it says Mas Shana, and then it says Shivim Shana, V'chamesh Shana. Well, here too, it could have said Me'ah V'shivim V'chamesh Shana, but there's a Shana after Ma'as Shana, 100 years, V'shivim Shana, 70 years, V'chamesh Shana. So again, it says a separate Shanim for each one, the hundreds, the tens, the 7, and then the ones, the Chamesh Shanim. And in the final, towards the end of the Parsha, says Ve'elish Nechai Yishmael. Again, Ma'as Shana, 100 years, Ushloishim Shana, and 30 V'sheva Shana. Rashi has a different interpretation by each of these 3 cases. In Pirush Rashi al HaTorah, we find something surprising in Rashi's commentary on the Torah. Chochas by alle 3 steht der Wort Shana Shonim. The word years is written by all. So Sai by Shana Shonim, Sai by Schum Meya, whether it's by the total of 100, Sai by the Asoris, Sai when we're talking about the tens, or Sai by Yechidus. So each one of them, when we talk about the hundreds, it tells you Shonim, and it tells you by the Asiris, by the Yechidus, when it counts the 70, the tens, and then when you tell the single ones, is Pirush Rashi Anders by Yederim Fuzei, but the Rashi's commentary changes, is different by all of them. This doesn't seem to be consistent at all. He gives a different shot in each one of these 3 places, which seemingly have the same idea that they have Shanas written each time. And Rashi gives a different interpretation. By Shnei Sara is a mefarish. By the years of Sara, Rashi comments, Lekach nichtav Shana b'chol klal uklal. Why is there the Shana by each general number, by the hundreds and by the tens and by the singulars? To tell you that we have to deal with each of these years as a unit by itself. When the father lernt enough, so that's what Rashi says. So bas kuf kibas chof, 100 years 100 years, she was just like 20 years. And that is L'chet. Rashi explains there, under 20, there was no sin at that time. Uh, by age of 20, there was no sin, because at that time the judgment didn't start but still, while she was a kuf, she was already 100, she was just like 20, there was no sin over there. Ubas chof, and then, so that's the kuf is similar to chof, and then ubas chof, kibazayin liyofi, and when she was 20, she was like a 7-year-old for beauty. So the 100 is like the 20, and the 20 is like the 7. So that's why we have different shonim to give each category, each group, its own shona to expound them each one by themselves. So basically, we have two drushes over here from this to equate the 100 to the 20 and to equate the 20 to the 7. Two drushes. But Bavrom and Zokt Rashi, Rashi seems to only say one drasha. But the Rashi says, Ben Kuf ki ben ayin, u ben ayin ki ben hey, beloichet. That when he was 100, he was just like a 70-year-old. And when he was a 70-year-old, ben ayin, he was like a hey, without sin in both cases. So 100, he didn't have a sin, but it was like 70, it was like 5. Same drasha as saying that the 100 was like 70, like 5. Was main the pashtus, which simply, as we learn it, it means as maleran taruis need by Sara, that we learn here, not like by Sara where each one is expounded for itself. Learn zwei yonim below chetun yofi. So over there we have two separate matters. We talk about first there was no sin, and then there was beauty. Two separate things that we learn out from the psukim. We learn just one aspect, one advantage. As Ben Kuf, that also while he was 100, is Avram given ayin or ben ayin. It was like a 70, or a ben ayin, kiben hey beloichet. Either kiben ayin or ben ayin kiben hey beloichet, as the Rashi says. So it was like 70. So basically, it was below chet. So it could be 70 was like 5 without a chet. But the pasuk says, 100 was like 5 without a chet. But the pasuk says 100 separately. So 100 was like 70, and 70 was like 5. But the bottom line is, it's only one thing here. There's below chet. And by Yishmael is Rashi bechlal nit mefarish. And by Yishmael, Rashi does not explain that all. Why do we need the and gives no interpretation? So seems strange how by Sara Rashi gives two drushes from the same pasuk. By Avram there's one drusha, and by Yishmael there's no drusha. In Mefarshei Rashi is done arichut gedoyle v'shakel v'tarya. In the commentaries on Rashi there is a great lengthy discussion, a give and take, how to answer these changes in Rashi. But Rebbe says, in addition to the various difficulty that exist in each one of these answers, not the place here now to go into it. Rebbe is not going to go and show the difficulty with all the different commentary. But there is a general so then there's a general question on all these commentaries, as we'd spoken many times. As their union is klal nit poshet, since this subject is not simple. As jeder meforish hot if them another has brought to the extent that each commentator has a different explanation. So therefore Rashi versus mefarish the psukim. Rashi explains the verses also for a 5-year-old who learns Chumash. He should have made it clear, his commentary, in such a way as only there should be no doubt what he means. So here we have all the commentaries struggling and coming up with different explanation. Why would Rashi leave it without telling us what he really means? Musman Zogan, so we must say As Rashi's Kavone is klar verstandig von der Wörter, was Rashi sagt wie Pirushe. The Rashi's intent is very clearly understood from those words that he says in his commentary. Und sie ist nicht nötig zu sein, and it's not really important to add to that. So basically, that everything is already in the Rashi over there, and we got to look for the answer in Rashi, not to come up with other answers like Old Mefarshi, because then Rashi would have had to clarify it. We have to say Rashi does clearly state, as the Rebbe will explain. Base. So the Rebbe is going to explain, because Rashi already put down the rule that you have to darshan each one by itself. We can't say that Rashi by Avram, Rashi says no, there's only one drasha. Over there also, the Rebbe actually explains that even though in the Lashon Rashi says Ben only mentions the Beloy Cheit once, but that's only Ben Ayin Kiben Hey, but the Ben Kuf Kiben Ayin, that is not, Rashi doesn't have to mention that. That's Poshet, because Rashi already said that we know that he had a child 100, and the Rebbe Rashi's already said that in that times there was a weakness. People didn't give birth after 70, 60 or 70. So Rashi is basically saying that the 100 is like 70 so that he can have children. That's obvious. That says in the Pasuk that he was 100, and Rashi quoted before that people only had children up till the age of 70. So he was 100, he was like 70, and then this 70, like 5, was as far as the Chet. Let's look inside. They're beer in them in this explanation. From them was Rashi sagt by Sara. By Rashi says by Sara lekach niftav shana b'chol klal uklal loimerloch. That's why there is a shana written by each of the general, by the numbers, loimerloch, by each group. Loimerloch, to tell you shekol echad nidresh le'atzmei, that we should expound each one by itself. Baskuf chulu. As from them was nichta, which means that from the fact that it was written shana b'chol klal uklal, by each group there is a separate shana, is muchach, it's evident. Shekol echad nidresh le'atzmei chulu, that each one has to be expounded for itself. The two things, lechet and leyofi, one for the sin and the other one for beauty, is verstandig me'atzmei, itself understood, as oich nogdem by Avram, and that also later on by Avram, was oich by him is nichtav shana b'chol klal uklal, by him is also written a shana by each group of the numbers, by the hundreds, the tens, and the singles. Muz yader klal zayin nidresh la'atzmei, we must expound each group by itself. And we learn two things. The Mele is moving, so therefore it's understood as when Rashi zogt by Avram. When Rashi says by Avram ben Kuf ki ben Ayin, that 100 will 70 mainter the meat. So what Rashi means with this, nit nora haschola from them limud. This is not just the beginning of what we're learning out, which is ein limud. This is just one thing. Was ein siyum is ben ayin ki ben hey, which ends with saying 70 was like 5 below chet, and this is the beginning of that limud. That 100 was like the 70 like 5. Nora hey sof Nora hey sof noch a besondere. So it's not just a beginning of it, but this is an addition. There's something totally separate learning that we learn out from this. Those was Rashi touched, so how come Rashi doesn't interpret it? In was besteht der limud from ben kufki ben ayin? In what the learning, what we learn from the fact that 100 was like 70, is as der far. That's for the reason was der chidush ve'inyan in was by Avram is given ben kufke ben ayin, because that novelty, the idea that Avram was, when he was 100, like he was like 70, steht beferish in pasuk. That is clearly written in the pasuk. But the Eibishter hat dann gesagt Avram, and as the vetop mazun von Sara, because when Hashem said to Avram that he'll have a son of Sara, sagt der pasuk, So the pasuk says, "Vayemer believe." So what did Avram say in his heart? Haleben meyoshono yevolit. Will he give birth when he's 100 years old? See, it was something surprising to him. As there's Olken and Hob and Akind in them Gil for Meyoshono, that he should be able to have a child on the age of 100 years. Rashi is dort mefarish, as Rashi explains, what is so surprising. As we may Avram, we find in the earlier generation, the Chumash, they had children much later in life. But as we may Avram, Nismat Hashonim, during the days of Avram, years have diminished. There was a weakness of power in the world. Shemiru till they say him, so they had their children quicker, B'nai Samach, and Rashi says specifically they were B'nai Ayin, 60 and 70. is verstandig bepashtus. So here we understand very simply. In Voses is given Ben Kufki Ben Ayin, what consisted that he was 100, like 70. By Avram Avinu, he was 100, he was like 70. That time, because of the weakness of strength that was in the world, is there guilt? So haben Kinder given bis bnei in the age to have children was till 70. Is aber der toshus koyach nit given, that weakness of power did not apply by Avram and to Avram. Women said, as you see, as it had geboren Yishmael to pay Shana. He gave birth to Yishmael, he was 86 years old. As euch zayendik. So, as euch zayendik ben kuf, so Rashi says, he's a given living kibenayin, just like the age of 70 in which you can have children. And the Rebbe explains that we see also that Rashi, even though Avram said, "Can I have children?" that wasn't a questioning Hashem, as opposed to by Sara, we say she was questioning. By Avram, it was a surprise. Rashi says it as a surprise. Now we could this will sweeten, we'll understand Rashi's a commentary of how Ben Meir Shona Yuvolid can 100-year-old give birth. So Rashi explains he didn't not believe it. Nita dos zatmia. That's not a question. How is it possible to have a child for 100 years? Noratmiya kayemes. It's a surprise. Wow. Omar Beliba, he said to his heart, Hanasech chesed ze la'achar masha kodesh baruch hu. Can such a kindness be done to me after what Hashem has done for me? So this is not, I don't believe it. It's not questioning. It's not this wondering, but it's a proclamation, but it's an expression of an excitement, saying, wow, 100-year-old will give birth. And this is all why? Because Avram had that strength. He gave birth to Yishmael. He had that strength. So this is just an expression of wow. But Mashenkin Sara. Sara was a different story. Sara was already in menopause, so she could naturally not have any children. Over there needed to be a whole other miracle to bring her back. Mashenkin Sara, as opposed to Sara. Since Sara already stopped having the normal, like by women, she couldn't physically, she was already after the time of childbearing age. So according to nature, it was impossible to her to give birth to children. And by here there was a miracle. Over there, it says, is anything wonder? Hashem can make any miracle. as by ihr soll geboren werden Yitzchak, that but she should give birth to Yitzchak. Nor Sara had getracht. Sara said when she expressed, she didn't just say about herself that that how could she have a child? She also said, she thought also he couldn't have any children. But Titzchak Sara says, Achre Beloisi, after Beloisi, after menopause, how my master is old, so she can't have children either. But by Avram, it was just a matter that he had the strength, versus by Sarah, which had to be a whole change because she already naturally could not have any children. And the Rebbe says now that we're explaining that it was just the idea that Avram had that strength, and he didn't, that he was Bas Kuf. He was, when he Ben Kuf, he was 100, he was like 70, he had the Koyach. This answers another question that we find that even 40 years later, when he was 140, he gave birth to all of the kids from Keturah. And Rashi doesn't explain how could he give birth at that age. He was over 100. It was 140 already. But the answer is Avram had special, he was unique, that he had the koyach. Based on this is also a big question answer. Rashi tells them, how come Rashi doesn't place himself, doesn't answer a question? Was by Avram seine geboren geworden Kinder. By Avram gave birth to children, Bnei Keturah. Mehr wie 40 Jahre noch lebt es Yitzchak. More than 40 years after Yitzchak was born. Und es wird der Bein in der Mond, als die Heilote ist gewähnt durch Hanes. And there's not mentioned that he gave birth through a miracle. So how come, how could he give birth? Because we already know the answer to that. This is already answered in the words that it was 100, it was like 70. As by Avram is not given ketashus koiches. By Avram, there wasn't that weakness of the power which everybody started having childhood before 70. It didn't apply to Avram. Was that magul when haben Kinder bis ayin, that this limited to have children until 70. Tashus koyach, there was a weakness of strength. Hatoifim ken shlitten it gehat, he had no dominance over him. And therefore, hat gehat Kinder zu kuf. So he had children at the age of 100 and also much later. Now, here we're saying, but it only says he was up to 100. But how do we adding all of a sudden up to 40? But the Rebbe brings the example when we said below chet. When we're saying that 70 was like 5 below chet, it doesn't mean that once he hit 70, he had a chet. It means at that point and from that point and on also. Similar as the advantage that he was without a chet, when we say Basagamas, the lotion is, although the language is ben ayin ki ben hey chet, when he was 70, he was like 5 without sin. This doesn't mean as Nogdem is given chas v'sholov anders that later on after 70 he changed it. Not as he remained the rest of his life without sin. The same thing here is. He had the strength at the age of 100, like the age of 70, but he kept that strength even to the age of 140. So the Rebbe brings now that we find that there's two madrashim. First of all, they didn't believe that Sara gave birth. So over there, the pasuk says that all the Saris, the princes, the women, they didn't believe, and Sara nursed all those babies to prove to them that she gave birth. And then we also find when it says Avram Hil this Yitzchak, people were making fun and saying the Litzoni Adar, no, that Sara didn't really get her baby from Avram, but from Avimelech, that took her to the palace. That's how she became pregnant. So there's a difference between the Loshen. Over here, we use the Loshen, the Soris, the princess, the women, But there we say Litzone Ador. Why? The Rebbe explains based on the above. The Rebbe explains Gimel Midam Chiluk between Avram and Sara, with this difference between Avram and Sara, that by Sara it was a total miracle, and by Avram it was only the fact that he had the strength. But that will also answers the change, the differences in Rashi's commentary. Of that Sara nursed children is Rashi Mefarish. Rashi explains that B'yoim HaMishtei Viyu HaSoris as B'neihem Imon. The princess, the women princes, they brought their sons with them, and she nursed them. So you oimres, because they would say, these princesses would say, they would argue, really, Sara didn't give birth. She brought in, collected somebody from the street, and she says that's her baby. So that's what it is. From Pasuk, not in Parshas Toldus, but in the verse, in the beginning of the portion of Toldus, it says, Avram Helis Yitzchak. Avram gave birth to Yitzchak. So Rashi, the Rashi says, the mockers, the one who make fun in the generation of that, they would say, that Sara, it's not Avram's baby, it's Abimelech. So what Hashem did was, he formed that Yitzchak looked just like Yaakov, like Avram. Everybody said Avram gave birth to Yitzchak because it's Yitzchak ben Avram, because Avram Yitzchak. You can see that it's the father. That me verstehen. So we need to understand that by Sara zokt Rashi as the Soris, the princes, Noshim Chashubes, the important women. Am gesagt lo yolda Sara. Sara didn't give birth. When it gets Avram and he's a mefarish, when it gets Avram, Rashi says, explains, as the mockers of the generation would say, that she became pregnant from Abimelech. I'm sorry. Euch is nicht verstandig, and also it's not understood. Das was heinika bonim Sara. The fact that Sara was able to nurse the babies is not a birur as yolda Sara. That verifies that Sara gave birth. When der Kind is nicht kein asufi, it's not that she picked them up in the street. Das is aber nicht kein Beweis, but that wouldn't prove that das is Avram's Kind. Doesn't prove it's Avram's child. Haben doch die Soras gekannt sagen. So these important women, these princesses, they could have said, as the Makras generation, as Abimelech is Abra Sara, that she became pregnant from Abimelech. Wisendik, as Avram is Azokim Meishon, and knowing that he's an old man, he was 100 years old. So even though she proved to them that she gave birth to him, but still don't have proof that it's Avram's baby. That me in them is noch starker. The surprise is even greater. In Gemara werden gebracht die zwei Unionen in ein Hemshach. The Gemara brings down these two aspects in one flow over there. And Nikav Sara. So the Gemara says, "How you call Mesoilam Meraninim Sheviu Yasufim Menashuk." All the nations of the world were murmuring that he brought that they brought in gathered somebody from the market. And Abraham Avinu Holach V'zima called Gedel Adur. So Abraham Avinu went and invited all the great of the generation. Sara Imenu Zimnes Nishuseim, and Sara, our mother, she invited all their wives. Venikas Kulam, and she nursed them all. Then it follows, and they would still complain. Sara Habas Tishim Shono Teled Avram. Sara, who was 90, can give birth. Avram ben Meir Shona Yelut. How could Avram give birth? He was 100 years old. So immediately the image of the face of Yitzchak turned, looked like Avram, so it's Avram's baby. So in the Gemara, we see it doesn't change to the make the Litzoni Adon. It's all one the Umas Oilam Aranim, both of them. So why does Rashi change it around? And how come the Soros didn't have the issue as the Rebbe asked? The Rebbe explains the Soros had only a problem. A real problem was only with Sara, because by Sara it required a total change. At that age, she couldn't naturally have children. So they only challenged that idea for Sara having a child. But for Avram, that's not such a, okay, there's weakness, but that's understood. So the Soros didn't challenge that. It's the Litzoni Hadoir. They didn't care what the truth. They just wanted to make fun. Al Pia now, that is verantwortet. Based on the above, this is answered. The chidush to me about the Soros, the novelty, what was the surprise by the Soros, by the princess, is melechatchila given nor b'negei to Sara. To begin with, it was only with regard to Sara. Hayois as by it is chodaliyas v'gomer. Since by her it already stopped, she was no longer in the childbearing age. So isn't it meglach tzom kinder? It's not possible to have children. Mashenkin Avram, but by Avram, they already saw that he had a child at the age of 86. Then the Gazeret Geboren Yishmael Tzupoivov Shana, seeing that he had given birth to Ishmael at 86 years, is Bazation compelling it given, so it wasn't a surprise. Was that he can also have a child when it was 100. And the fact, and therefore, is Euch by Anoshim Chashuvim Bechlal, compelling it given by the important people generally, wasn't a surprise. Was Avram Hillis Yitzchak? They didn't ask a question. How could Avram Hillis? That wasn't such a surprise. Nor did they had those who want to make fun of the generation. Who don't really care the truth about the matter. They're just looking for a place in which they can make fun. They can mock and make litzonas. Nor they haben gesagt. So it's only them saying, umital litzonas, and in a mocking way, in a fun way, Avimelech nesabra Sara, that Sara became pregnant from Avimelech. But the Eberster had aber gewollt bewarnen, and the Eberster wanted to forewarn, Hafilu the litzone hadoir, even the mockers of the generation. Therefore, and that's why Tzor cluster Ponav Shel Yitzchak Doimel Avram. He formed that the face of Yitzchak should be similar to Avram. Vayidu HaKoil, and everybody testified. Afilu de Litzone Ador, even the mockers of the generation, Avram Hoili des Yitzchak, Avram gave birth to Yitzchak. Okay, so now we still have to answer the question, what about Yishmael? How come Rashi doesn't say anything about Yishmael? The Rebbe is going to explain that really by Yishmael, everything that was said by Avram, these two levels are also applied to Yishmael as well. These two, the two Shana. Rashi doesn't repeat himself. Dalet. The time for was Rashi is not mefarish by Yishmael. Why does Rashi not explain by Yishmael ben Kuf ki ben Lamed ben Lamed ki ben Zayin? When he was 100, it was like 30. When like 30, like 7. Afal pivas oich dort state shana b'chol klal u'klal. But there also says shana by each of the groupings of the numbers. Is valdos is moving ba'atzmi. This is self-understood. Loid and pirush Rashi, according to this Rashi's explanation, in themselves hemshech in the same flow ba'avrom. Ben kuf ki ben lamet. 100 was like 30, as Toshus Koiches, on Toshus Koiches, that he was at 100, he wasn't weak, his power, Yishmael. Umen Lamed ki ben Zayin, l'chet. And for 30 to like 7 for sin. Zayin Shuvaton, his doing Teshuvah, he was at 30, like 7-year-old. Zog der mit der Posik is schon gewähnt. So when did Leisov do tshuva? Schon gewähnt for Lamed Shana on. Once he turned 30, he already did tshuva. That's why the Posik is saying, Ben Lamed ki ben Zayin, l'chet, that he was like, Okay, so that would make that would answer very well. We doesn't have to repeat it because it's just like by Avram. But we have to answer this with regards. Now we have another Rashi, which seems to tell us that the whole pasuk is Bichlal not trying to tell us anything about Yishmael. The whole pasuk is trying to give us to teach us something else. And here we're all of a sudden telling you that there's teaching you about Yishmael, that he did Shuvah at the age of 30. We have to understand that Rashi on the spot by that pasuk. Zokt Rashi, Lomon nimnu shnoisov shel Yishmael. Why does the Torah tell us the numbers? How old Yishmael, the years of Yishmael? And Rashi says, Kedei liyachzvem shnoisov shel Yaakov, in order to relate to them the years of Yaakov. Rashi goes through the whole cheshbon over there, that knowing when Yishmael, how old he was, will tell us about the years of Yaakov. Rashi is the noch gleich mefarish, as Rashi immediately explains, as Misnoisov shel Yishmael, that from the years of Yishmael, Lomadnu sheshimesh Yaakov bebeis Ever Yudalet Shana, we learned that he served in the house of Ever, that he ran away after Vayetze Yaakov. In between going to Lavan, he was there for 14 years, because there's 14 years missing over there, because when Nevoy is married, as Rashi says over there, we're not going to go into that whole Rashi. Thus haste. What it means, Rashi is telling you, but at the end of the day, that why do we need to know the years of Yishmael? As mit Zayin the Mispar Shnoisov Shel Yishmael, why is the Torah telling us the years of Yishmael? Is the pasuk nit oisun zu sagen? The pasuk is not coming here to tell us, or the Meramazayin episode, to hint to something b'shayches to Yishmael and Alain, as it applies to Yishmael by himself. Nor dosis kideli yachas mem shnoisov shel Yaakov is just to relate to Yishmael's age about Yaakov's years. But here we're saying that this is something about the Shona. Shona is telling us something about Yishmael himself. So that's one thing. But the other thing is, so according to Rashi, we don't understand at all. If the whole reason over here is just to tell us, why is there a Shona there? Why is there a Shona by every group of the numbers? Why didn't it just say 100 and the years of Yishmael? 137. So why don't we just say what's saying that? So because of this question, this forces us to say in Rashi, as Loma Nichtav Shona Chulu is Melachatchila Kinkashinit, that this to begin with is not a question. Nochum Pirush by Avram and Kinal. After Rashi says by Avram, it's not a problem. And we know, because it's telling us the two things, that he had, he was 100 like 30, and 30 like 7, that he did Shuvah. The kash is over Lomnu Nimnu Shnoisov Shel Yishmael B'chlal. But it's still a question, why do we need to count the years of Yishmael? But the Ben Chomish Lemikra Zet, as the Ben 5-year-old learning Chomish sees, as Torah that zählt nor in Yonim, the Torah relates only those matters which are important. I feel a need wegen Chanoich Mesushalach Tzadikim. Even not about Chanoich and Mesushalach were Tzadikim. The Torah doesn't tell you their ages. We don't see their ages. So why does the Torah mention it to Yaakov Avinu? But like them is over move on azoich mitzugem shona b'chol klal uklal. So then we also understand, though, when the Torah added the shona by each one of the groups, is the pasuk nit oisun nor zu vergleichen ze lo ze. The pasuk is not just coming to equate the Yorim from Yishmael, only the years of Yishmael, ben Kuf, ben Lamed v'chulu. Was dos is nor achidush u'mayla nesefs Yishmael, and that would be just a novelty and additional advantage in Yishmael. Vibald as the posik b'chlal is nitoishin Yishmael and Gufa. He's not even interested in telling about Yishmael. So the fact that the Torah doesn't, even though Yishmael, the Tshuva, by Lamed, the Torah doesn't even give us years of tzaddikim, even though only when it's important, not even so they're tzaddikim. So why would we say the years of Yishmael? So we have to say that it's the Yachas Yaakov, but still, why does the Torah write Shana Shana? So since the pasuk b'chlal, generally we're saying about you. We want to say about Yaakov to know the years of Yaakov. Nor benegates Yaakov, and as it relates to Yaakov. So why does the Torah write in Shana Shana? And those was the pasuk zokt fort euch by Yishmael. So how come the Torah still says by Yishmael Shana b'chol klal u'klal? Was there uptail in order to separate it by each group? The other klal from Shana l'Atzmai by separating each general group by itself is Kenal Meramis. That is, as I said before, hints Oifa Maila un Oiftu, on an advantage and a novelty was given by Yishmael in Yedrin from the Ismanim. That was by Yishmael in older times, Kuf, Lamed, Zayin. 100 like 30, 30 like 7. Is das nicht kidei as mizo vergleichen die Yorim von Yishmael and Zeh. So that's not so that we compare Yishmael's year one to the other as beim zayin given odi mailas chulu, that he had these advantages. That's why nor kidei liyachas b'em Yaakov. But that's only in order to give the yichus in those years to Yaakov. So losen wissen yichus mailas Yaakov. The Torah is telling us the yichus and the advantage of Yaakov. Those was the Torah is merames dob in Egeya Yishmael and Zayin Milas. The reason the Torah hints over here with regards to Yishmael, what his greatnesses are, is liyaches b'hem Yaakov, is in order to relate to those years Yaakov. Mezol wissen as by Yaakov seine given meyuchas dike yorn. He had more. He had very special yichas dike years. These advantages that you have by Yishmael were by Yaakov on a much greater level. So Memela, while we're telling you some milas about Yishmael, but it's not for Yishmael itself. It is to tell you and the yichus of Yaakov that Yaakov is on a whole different level, these milas that you had by Yishmael. Hey, the Birnda. What's the explanation? The Shinuvas is given in Yishmael to Ben Kuf. What took place by Yishmael when he was 100 is was Elishen given about Shuba, that he was already about Shuba. The Rashi Zog B'Pirushay. Rashi says in his commentary, as Yishmael had Shuba Giton noch B'Chayay Avram, that Yishmael did Shuba while Avram lived. Und Yishmael is given 89 Jahre b'shas Mitzvahs Avram. Yishmael was 89 years old when Avram died. So that means that he was already about Shuvah. Und das bewortet Rashi, and this Rashi cautions us as nicht gucken dik auf them. Was it is given about Shuvah, notwithstanding the fact that it was about Shuvah. Is bis as by him state by Yigba to the extent that it says that he expired. Allah state nor by tzaddikim, that means that Yishmael tzaddik. Hotes ober came batref nit legabe the tzidkes from Yaakov. This has no value if you measure it against the righteousness of Yaakov. The Meile von Ben Shloishim is koidim zman atoshus koyach von Ben Samach Ben Ayin. The 30 year, that comes before the weaknesses that take place 60 or 70. Beshloishim lekoyach, that's when the power, L'Shana Mishnah. V'mezed b'muchash, oicha ben chomesh, We see vividly, even a 5-year-old sees it. As in Gil von Shloishim, that when you're 30 years old, is the Gevura by mentioned by Yitzim Teikfa, the strength by the person is in the full force. When Yishmael Zaynik der Tzu Azavos Yode Bakoil, Yishmael in the top of that, he had everything. His hand was in everything. Is move on as in Alter von Shloishim is given a giver. So he must have been. So he, in the age of 30, he was a very powerful man. Und von deswegen hat auf Yishmaels Geburt kein Betreff nicht gegen Wolosow shel Yaakov. The strength that Yishmael had has no comparison, no value next to the strength of Yaakov. Rashi is mefarish from Posuk, as Rashi explains on the verse, "Vayogelas Eben al pi habeir," that when he came there, he removed the stone from on top of the opening of the well. Rashi says, "Kimishamavid is hapkak mal pitzluch," is like one who removes a stopper from the jug, the plug from the jug. Tells you he has a great power. Alpha Pivos Damult is Yaakov given like Pirush Rashi ben Ayin Zayin Shon. At that time, according to Rashi, he was 77 years old. So when we said that he was hundreds, by the strength, it's not compared all to Yaakov's strength. The Rinja Miyuchat von Ben Shava is verstandig from Pirush Rashi and Al Bavrom. The specialty of a 7-year-old is understood from the Rashi. Ben Ayin kiven Hey beloy chet. 70 like a 5-year-old without sin. As Ayin dikakotn is a beloy chet, that being a child, he's without sin. Volkman gekent meinen. So you might have thought, as in dem prat is the Shaykh zu Machalik sein, that perhaps in this detail of a child not having a sin, can't make a distinction between Yishmael and Yaakov. You can't make a difference between Yishmael and Yaakov. In the meaning from Katanim Belechet, in the idea that when they were minors without a sin, so seemingly that they're both the same. Therefore, the Torah says, as in them, also in this aspect of not having sin, Yishmael has no value comparison at all to Yaakov. Well, the etzem mitzias from Yaakov is anders from Yishmael, because the essence of the existence, who Yaakov is different than Yishmael. He's ben ha'amo, he's the son of the maid. Is whatever detail we're talking about, the jeden prat and prat is Yaakov in ganzen anders. Yaakov is entirely different. Hecher from Yishmael is higher than Yishmael. Und der Far le'nimnu shnoisav shel Yishmael. All of the years of Yishmael, koilo the mile of zayin berumis and the gibel panim shola, including also the advantage that are hinted in the 3 times shana that is mentioned, nor kidei liachis b'hem shnoisav shel Yaakov, just to relate to them the years of Yaakov, that Yaakov was much on a higher level. This is Mesichas Motzei Shabbos Kodesh Pashas Chayay Sara Tov Shin Mem.